It's like whenever I see like some on social media, we're like, I love treating hamstring tendinopathy. It's so easy. Or I love treating Achilles. I'm like, no,
Mm.
no, it's not. And, I think the hamstring is, one of those areas that can be extremely challenging. When you mentioned 5 times body weight, can you explain that? Like how you test it and what you're looking for with that?
Yeah, so when I'm talking 5 times body weight, I'm just talking purely newtons per kilo. So if I'm a 100 kilo athlete, then I want to be executing 500 newtons on the Nordic as a baseline. As I might clarify a little bit around that shortly, because you can go further detail. So the Nordic is, when someone holds the heels down and you're on your knees, and someone's holding your heels, and you sort of let yourself go, and then you've got to stop yourself from falling to the ground. So it's a capacity measure of hamstring eccentric tolerance, I guess. And then, further developed, there's the Nord board, which is by Vald that, now it's just routinely used sort of everywhere, and that provides a measure on it. There are other devices that measure it. So that gives you a force reading or an output on your numbers. So that's purely where I come up with the number I guess what we're looking for is a minimum standard. So you're looking at, yeah, again, 500 newtons if I'm 100 kilos, but also looking at having at least a less than 10% asymmetry. So you don't want like one, 600 and one 500. And then, if I'm layering things onto that and want to explore it further, obviously looking at ideally they're able to get out to longer lengths. So not just sort of breaking and falling early. So obviously high force at long
Yeah.
muscle lengths. And then the final piece is probably, you can look at the actual trace, and are they getting like a nice fluid trace of that, and not just being all jagged and working around. So actually, Brian Heiderschott, who's talking at that course, has a masterclass, and he talks through some of that work around the trace and some of that balance between the muscles in hamstrings really well.
So if someone didn't have like something to measure that, how could they do it in their clinic?
Great question. So you can do probably two ways. Well, one, in just doing the Nordic, I think if you can visualize just holding someone's heels, and if they can let themselves go and sort of at least control their fall a little bit, and not just like collapse down, so they can get out pretty far and hold a little bit before dropping. That's a pretty good indication they're doing that okay. Like they're probably in the high echelons, and they look like they're getting out long, and they're not just like collapsing and falling. I'd say that's pretty good. Then if you get someone who you fall and collapse, they're way off. So it's probably around, yeah, how long they're getting and how they can just hold that a little bit as a nice indicator. And I guess another way then is just doing some clinical eccentric testing. So some of that is, prone on the bed, where you would handheld dynamometry or even just your hands and do a brake test,
Yeah.
left versus right. And that's probably to test that sort of out of range eccentric capacity.
When you're doing the Nordic, are you also, I'm assuming you're kind of also looking for like complete loss of form and breaking of, you know,
Well, yeah, you are. I mean, form plays a definite role. Early on, I just let them go a little bit with it to see how they
okay.
execute it,
Yeah.
and then I can sort of coach a little bit. But yeah, ultimately, if we're talking hip flexion, you don't want them like fully hip flex at the hips
Yeah.
where they're just falling all the way, but also you don't necessarily need them fully up straight. A slight
Yeah.
little flexion at the hip can get so you're getting a bit more bias through biceps long head. And then, yeah, coaching them through that. And maybe sometimes I might coach them around, hey, not worrying about trying to work so hard in that first phase of it. Some of they just grip, 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 and use up all the energy in the inner range. Just to let yourself go slowly, and then get the heels to the sky and stop yourself from falling is sometimes a cue that I could use.
I would think apprehension would be a factor in that test too. Like when you get someone where like, I don't even want to try doing that.
Oh, definitely. Early on, or back when the early days research came out around Nordics being a nice prevention tool, or a nice tool that can be used to mitigate some of the risk for hamstrings, then yeah, the DOMS equivalent, or the talk around the
Yeah.
DOMS and the soreness post was always, something that athletes would want to do. So how you bring it in, especially if you're in an elite setting, you got to, really bring it
Yeah.
in slowly. But yeah, I guess the apprehension might be information as well. If you're coming back from an injury and they're apprehensive with that, then, are they fully rehabilitated? Maybe not. So it's something that, yeah, they've just a little bit of grading effect before you're sort of getting your results certainly helps.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting on that blog too, how, I'm always down at the foot and I know how detailed the
Mhm.
foot is. Um,
Yep.
And then I was reading in that blog too, just looking at like the differences of training for like the long head versus the short head versus the membranosus versus the tendinosis. Not being, I'm so kind of into the foot and ankle that I guess, I need to, that's why I love your courses so much because it always gives me a refresh on what's necessary everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And where I guess some of this sits is, these guys who are talking are sort of top of their game, right? Where
Yeah.
they are in the hamstring space. And what they see a lot is some of those recurrent issues. So they might see two or three athletes and then they come and see them or how that works. So their sort of bias, I guess, yeah, and we do try to provide the information for the top level clinicians, but sometimes just doing the basic
Yeah.
101 stuff will get you there. And then when you have got all that sorted and maybe you're still having issues, you need to explore some further things. But yeah, certainly there's a certain, for Kieran talks, there's a certain level to certainly look at long head of biceps activation patterns. So the simplest thing is when someone's doing an exercise for you, ask where are you feeling it. If they've probably had their recent strain to their long-headed biceps and every exercise they do, they're feeling it in the medial muscles, maybe we're not getting that load through the injured tissue that we need to get the strength of the collagen to get a good healing process there. So it's a little bit about that, and also we know how muscles can just compensate across the journey. So yeah, you really want
Yeah.
to probably make sure that's getting targeted, and then yeah, there's obviously layers further to that that are mentioned in that blog around maybe training short to long head and how we can
Yeah.
buy some of those exercises. I think that was Michael G. Kumas. He's at one of the EPL teams now. So that was yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. We'll put I think you sent me that link, so I'll attach that to this. You guys should definitely check that out and read through this because it's excellent content.
I'll get that across. Well, certainly one thing that was mentioned a lot of that course was the importance of the foot and ankle. So for
I saw
hamstrings,
that.
so like, and that comes out a fair bit. So obviously, if you're collapsing at the ankle in the running gait cycle, you're lacking that real foot and ankle stiffness in your high speed running, then it's obviously affecting the gait pattern, leading to increased strain through the hamstring and potentially an injury. So anyone who's ever looking at a hamstring should definitely be, exploring around the foot, mainly around, hey, is there a recent ankle injury, syndesmosis, something there, loss of range, poor strength that we need to include in our program to be comprehensive. It's a big factor.
Yeah, the foot and ankle are getting a lot more, at least a lot more attention, I feel like lately. So that's always good to see.